Hello, I'm Adrian Seet, and this is Nightline, the headlines. Government to review bankruptcy threshold, says Prime Minister. And Russian missiles strike Kyiv for the first time in 3 weeks. Thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob on Sunday conducted a random spot check on prices of goods at a supermarket in Kuala Lumpur. Speaking to the media after conducting the spot check, he said he did not deny that there was an increase in the price of chicken and other raw materials before the removal of the goods subsidies.
Sebelum 30 ni, masih lagi harga yang disubsidi oleh kerajaan. Tak sepatutnya sampai RM8.90 daripada pemborong kepada peruncit. Sepatutnya lebih rendah sebab peruncit pun perlu mengambil keuntungan.
The Prime Minister stressed that he will carry out similar spot checks after this to ensure that no profiteering of goods is done by traders before the abolition of subsidies for chicken and some other goods on July 1st. During the spot check, Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri also spent time listening to the grouses of the people who shopped at the supermarket, most of whom complained about the increase in prices of goods. He also informed that he would be holding a special meeting on Monday with the relevant ministries to discuss issues surrounding chicken supply and the new ceiling price for chicken in the market, besides the increase in the price of some other raw items such as fish. In other news, Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri said the government will review the country's bankruptcy threshold in light of the rise in bankruptcy cases, especially amongst youths in Malaysia. He added that he will hold discussions with Bank Negara Malaysia Governor Tan Sri Nur Syamsiah Muhammad Yunus on measures to curb the problem. Expressing his concern over the spike in the number of youths being declared bankrupt as of this year, the Prime Minister said Putrajaya may reintroduce its previous method in helping the younger generation. This was in reference to the government's previous action in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, where the Malaysian Department of Insolvency, MDI, increased the bankruptcy threshold to RM100,000 from RM50,000, which had delayed legal action against defaulters.
Saya akan berbincang dengan Menteri Undang-Undang supaya melihat semula akta dan saya juga akan berjumpa dengan Governor Bank Negara untuk melihat dari segi tindakan undang-undang supaya boleh kita tangguhkan lagi ataupun sebagainya.
Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri said this in his speech at the closing ceremony of the 2022 Barisan National BN Youth Job Fair at the World Trade Center in Kuala Lumpur on Sunday. As such, the Prime Minister urged employers and companies to create more job opportunities, especially for the younger generation, to prevent them from becoming a victim of bankruptcy. In May this year, the MDI revealed that there were 287,411 people in the country who have been declared bankrupt as of March of 2022. Most of them were forced to declare bankruptcy for failing to clear loan debts because of insufficient funds, with Selangor recording the highest number of cases with 71,659, followed by Kuala Lumpur with 45,630 cases reported. Statistics also showed that the number of bankruptcy cases involved the private sector workers and businessmen between the ages of 35 and 44. The total amount of subsidies is expected to reach nearly 80 billion ringgit this year. Overall, the projected consumption subsidies expenditure for 2022 is the highest amount of subsidies in history ever borne by any government in the country. In the 100th People Financial Report released on Sunday, Finance Minister Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul Abdul Aziz said to reduce inflationary pressures on the people, the government has provided various consumption subsidies consisting of petrol, diesel, liquefied petroleum gas, cooking oil, flour and electricity, which are expected to be close to 80 billion ringgit. However, he pointed out that the government continued to implement policies that in general aimed at curbing inflation to avoid excessive price increases and at the same time help those in need in terms of direct assistance. He also said the policy is seen to have produced a situation that is considered controllable, especially when compared to other countries. Dato Sri Tengku Zafrul added that large amounts of government funds have been spent to address the impact of the pandemic, including saving people's lives through the national vaccination programs, as well as maintaining employment and business capacities through the wage subsidy programs. He further said that his ministry is also reviewing the country's fiscal resources that are needed to be strengthened to rebuild Malaysia's social-economic resilience, especially for the B40 and M40 groups. Cases of influenza-like illness, ILI, in the country are currently under control, despite several clusters involving boarding schools being detected. Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin said the public, especially parents, did not have to worry as it was only a common infection and would emerge from time to time, apart from patients only needing monitoring and isolation.
Kes influenza ni akan bertambah dari masa ke semasa, terutamanya bila kita dah tak ada PKP dan kita dah mula mengurangkan langkah-langkah kesihatan awam seperti penjarakan fizikal, tak perlu pakai pelitup muka di luar dan sebagainya.
Khairi said this to reporters after attending the PK B40 health screening program in Rembau Negeri Sembilan on Sunday. He added there was no need to close schools at this time and the district health officers would always make a risk assessment on cases of infectious disease. Khairi also explained that in the event that the number of cases is at an alarming level after the risk assessment is made, then certain measures will be implemented as soon as possible. On Saturday, the media reported that the Selangor Health Department had detected an increase in cases of infections such as ILI in educational institutions, especially boarding schools, over the past 2 weeks. Areas identified as being at high risk of geological disasters, especially debris flow, will be given priority for the installation of the Early Warning System, EWS. Energy and Natural Resources Minister Dato Sri Taqiyuddin Hassan said the Minerals and Geoscience Department, JMG, had information on the risky locations, but it could not be disclosed at this time.
Misalnya ada satu tempat yang pihak-pihak yang pakar ni beritahu ada risiko dan sebagainya, mungkin untuk belum tamat. We cannot afford to wait until this thing happen baru kita nak ambil tindakan, tak boleh dah.
Dato Sri Taqiyuddin said this after attending the EWS Debris Flow Geological Disaster Awareness Program with a Jerai Geopark community in Yan, Kedah on Sunday. He said the EWS, which was installed in Titi Hayun following the debris flow disaster in August last year, was a pilot project that would be used as a national benchmark and model in reducing the risk of such disasters. He also said that the system will be installed in other locations based on the plans being drawn up by the Ministry and JMG, which would also identify new development projects, including infrastructure projects in high-risk areas. Johor Menteri Besar Dato' On Hafiz Ghazi said legal action should be taken against the betrayal that has caused the country to lose Pulau Batu Putih to Singapore. He said this when winding up the debate on the opening speech of the Sultan of Johor, Sultan Ibrahim Sultan Iskandar, at the Johor State Assembly sitting on Sunday. Dato' On said the decision by the then Pakatan Harapan PH government to withdraw a review application over the International Court of Justice ICJ's decision on the Pulau Batu Putih claim was a mistake that not only set a bad precedent but also created a dark moment in history of this sovereign nation and will lead to disputes over overlapping claims for maritime areas. He pointed out that the island was a strategic maritime position crucial to the country, adding that the ICJ had clearly stated that Pulau Batu Putih had once been part of the Johor Sultanate. He also said losing Pulau Batu Putih, which was located on the main route for merchant ships through the Straits of Malacca and the South China Sea, hurt the people, especially fishermen, who complained that their source of income was affected. On June 16th, Sultan Ibrahim Almarhum Sultan Iskandar also expressed disappointment with the federal government's decision to withdraw its application for a judicial review on Pulau Batu Putih in 2018. Tourism Malaysia in Frankfurt, Germany is revitalizing the post-pandemic tourism industry market by promoting Sabah's ethnic culture to attract tourists from Europe. The initiative includes the dance and music of the Sabahan tribes, such as Murut, Kadazan Dusun, Orang Sungai and Bajau, which were showcased at the Bankruptcy Open Air Museum in Switzerland last week. TV3's correspondent Haliza Hashim reports.
The Bankruptcy Open Air Museum is located about 80 kilometers from Bern, the capital of Switzerland. The museum is an important cultural, research and tourist institution as it attracts around 200,000 visitors from around the world every year. Tourism Malaysia in Frankfurt said the uniqueness of Sabah's native dances and music was aimed at bringing Swiss tourists to seek adventures in Malaysia. Many of those present had never seen a cultural show from Malaysia and were delighted to engage with the performances.
Yes, this is the first time we have a collaboration with Malaysia. Yeah, it's a fantastic new culture we can show here, like an inspiration for them. It's sometimes you have to recover something new, something you don't know before, and it makes you interesting, it makes you wondering, and I'm sure people will be interested to see that in the original location in Malaysia.
Kita menyasarkan lebih kurang 80,000 ketibaan daripada negara-negara Jerman, Switzerland dan Austria dan Poland. Jadi kita harap kita kena buat sesuatu selepas post-pandemic untuk menarik perhatian mereka lah untuk datang ke Malaysia.
Tourism Malaysia in Frankfurt is actively diversifying the promotion of tour packages with the industry players in Switzerland, Germany, Austria and Poland in order to attract the entire spectrum of tourists. Sabah Tourism Board said cooperation with a network of international airlines will definitely help to attract a large number of tourists from Europe. During the two-day promotional event, handicrafts from Sabah and traditional games such as congkak also grabbed the visitors' attention.
Orang Switzerland ataupun orang dari Eropah menghargai tradisi sesebuah negara, bukan sahaja dari segi craft ataupun dari segi tarikan semula jadi, tapi dari segi persembahan tarian etnik, sangat mempesona bagi mereka.
Haliza Hashim, TV3, Bankruptcy, Switzerland.
When the COVID-19 pandemic upended many people's work lives and leisure time, participation in recreational activities or pastime interests, whether indoors or outdoors, increased amongst Malaysians. One of which is the remote control or RC cars, a hobby that became popular once again during the pandemic when people sought for activities to cure their lockdown boredom. Our reporter Alif Yunus has the story.
During the long months spent adjusting to working from home and staying indoors due to the pandemic, many people turn to hobbies such as RC cars and crawlers as it can deliver hours of fun and thrill. The interest in the hobby gained even more traction once the RC enthusiasts found like-minded individuals on social media as well as in real-life racing and off-roading meetups. Furthermore, prevalence of local participation in racing events is leading to increased demand for remote control products among hobbyists. Malaysia National League Race Director Sofian Hussein said the RC scene in Malaysia has seen positive growth since the league became one of the major hosts for RC events in the ASEAN region.
Like RC buggy, during my time when I joined the RC, already 2 times that Malaysia become host for Asia race. So we have Asia race 2 times, as far I know lah. Then we also have a World Championship race for GT on road. And we have a good facility like here, Putrajaya, and also we have an international on-road track in Kepong. So yes, and actually the location, actually for Asia race, Malaysia is center. Like for our neighboring country, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia. So when we host the event, they all come here.
For Siput Park Club President Muhammad Sharin Mandalam, the growth of RC events in Malaysia has also benefited the country, especially the tourism industry.
think first, when we hosted a lot of competitions in Malaysia, right? And when we hosted these competitions, we get firstly, when you're talking about tourism, we have local tourism. We still have people from Sabah, Sarawak, and we're not traveling to Selangor to join us in our competitions. When we open up all this competition, there's at least 170 families coming to the central of Malaysia, like in Selangor, right? And when we're talking about international people, of course, we have players from Singapore, we have players from Thailand, we have players from Indonesia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, US, and also UAE, who came to Malaysia before when we hosted all this competition.
RC cars and crawlers can be more than just a hobby, as it has the potential to become a serious sport. Drivers not only pit their driving abilities against one another on a racing track or rough terrain, but can also show off their modification and technical skills. Sharin also said that learning how to fine-tune a vehicle, especially an RC crawler, is an excellent way to become a more skilled driver. It is also believed that parents and children working together on a common hobby such as RC cars can build significant emotional bonds between them. Alif Yunus, TV3.
One dead after Philippine ferry catches fire at sea. News from the foreign front when we return. From the foreign front. Over in the Philippines, at least one person was killed after a fire engulfed a ferry on Sunday, forcing scores of people on board to jump into the sea. Now, authorities said rescuers plucked 163 passengers and crew from the waters of the central island of Bohol as they search for one missing passenger. It was reported that the body of a passenger has been recovered and a Coast Guard ship has been deployed to help with the search. The Mama Mary Chloe vessel, which had a 236-person capacity, was carrying 157 passengers, including 15 children, along with 8 crew from Ube in Bohol to Bato on the nearby island of Leyte. Russian missiles struck the Ukrainian capital Kyiv on Sunday, the first attacks on the city in almost 3 weeks, sparking calls by Ukraine for more support from the G7 leaders meeting in Germany. Now, according to officials, the strikes have killed 1 person and wounding 5 more after Russian missiles hit a residential building and the compound of a kindergarten. It was reported that up to 4 explosions shook central Kyiv early on Sunday, with 2 more explosions in the city hours later. A Ukrainian Air Force spokesperson said between 4 to 6 long-range missiles were fired from Russian bombers, adding that some of the incoming missiles were shot down by Ukrainian air defenses. Following the attack, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has called on the group of 7 countries holding a 3-day summit in Germany to impose further sanctions on Moscow and to provide more heavy weapons, as it was said that the strikes intended to intimidate Ukrainians ahead of a NATO summit in Madrid later this week. Meanwhile, Indonesian President Joko Widodo on Sunday said he will urge his Russian and Ukrainian counterparts to open room for dialogue during a peace-building mission to the warring countries and ask Russia's Vladimir Putin to order an immediate ceasefire. Before leaving to attend the G7 summit, Jokowi said he will encourage the G7 countries to seek peace in Ukraine following Russia's invasion and find an immediate solution to global food and energy crisis. He added that the war has to be stopped and global food supply chains need to be reactivated. Separately, Indonesian Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi stated that food and fertilizer products from Russia and Ukraine need to be reintegrated into the global market despite the war. The minister said it is necessary to secure grain corridor from Ukraine and open food and fertilizer exports from Russia, adding that all countries must refrain from actions that further exacerbate this food crisis.
얼굴이 시청자가되어 국변에 행동력 한마음과 힘과 생명 우리
Action. Consadole Sapporo beat Gamba Osaka 1-0 to move to the top half of the J-League on Sunday. After a scoreless first half, Sapporo's winning goal came in the 51st minute via Yoshiaki Komai. Sapporo's win put an end to their 3-match losing streak, while it was the 4th consecutive defeat for Gamba Osaka. In another match, substitute Yuki Kakita scored twice as Sagan Tosu pounded FC Tokyo 5-0 at home on Sunday. Yuto Iwasaki opened the scoring for Sagan in the 30th minute. Diego doubled the lead in the 48th minute. Fuji Honda slotted in the third goal in the 70th minute before Kakita added another 2 goals in the 78th and 85th minute to complete the rout. The hosts won for the second time in the past 3 J1 matches to move into 6th place in the table on 27 points. FC Tokyo remain on 25 points after its second league loss in a row. Drowned religious teacher, 2 sons laid to rest. Details when we return. Welcome back. In Kedah, the bodies of 3 family members who drowned after the car they were travelling in skidded and plunged into a river at Jambatan Syed Omar in Baling were laid to rest on Sunday. The remains of 37-year-old Mashito Ibrahim and her sons, Muhammad Aziad Zikri Sharudin and Muhammad Aziad Haziq, aged 7 and 5 respectively, were brought to her late mother's house in Kampung Paya Kerchut, Bukit Pinang at 4:05 p.m. after post-mortem at Kulim Hospital were completed. The remains were then taken to the Masjid Al-Zaitun for funeral prayers and buried in a common grave at the Masjid Al-Zaitun Muslim Cemetery at 5:45 p.m. About 200 relatives and friends were present at the funeral, including Mashito's husband, 51-year-old Sharudin Aziz, and their eldest son, 10-year-old Muhammad Aziad Hadis. On Saturday, Mashito, who was driving a Proton Persona car, lost control of the wheel, causing the car to skid before plunging into Sungai Muda at 6:50 p.m. The body of the Islamic education teacher was found together with her 2 sons in her arms inside the car, which was spotted by divers on the riverbed at 1:41 a.m. at a depth of 25 feet. The vehicle was then lifted using a crane from the river at 3:30 a.m. Baling Police Chief Superintendent Shamsuddin Mamat said the cause of the incident was still under investigation. Police have classified the death of 2 women who were found burnt to death at their 3-storey bungalow house in Tiara Villa, Taman Gembira as sudden death. Brickfields Police Chief Assistant Commissioner Ami Hizam Abdul Shukur said the cause of the fire was still under investigation. Ami Hizam, in a statement on Sunday, said authorities received information on the fire at 6:24 a.m. He added, based on investigations at the scene, 2 charred bodies were found in 2 bedrooms in the upper floor of the bungalow. He also said the deceased were a 62-year-old woman and her 31-year-old daughter. 2 men were also injured in the fire. Firemen who arrived at the scene at 6:30 a.m. took between 30 and 40 minutes to fully douse the blaze. Meanwhile, Kuala Lumpur Fire and Rescue Department Deputy Director Rozihan Anwar Mamat said initial investigations found that the fire started on the 3rd floor of the bungalow.
Maklumat awal yang kita terima ada 6 mangsa, tetapi setelah selesai operasi pemadaman pada jam 7.22 pagi, kita berjaya selamatkan 2 orang mangsa, 1 lelaki dewasa berumur 60 tahun dan 1 lelaki dewasa 33 tahun berumur 33 tahun.
It was revealed that 2 more members of the family were not at home when the incident occurred. As we wrap up Nightline this time around, let's take a look at the Thai tradition of water buffalo racing, which took place in the Chonburi province. The noisy, muddy and slightly chaotic annual tradition marks the beginning of the rice planting season, with the festival-like atmosphere taking place for the first time in 2 years after a hiatus during the COVID-19 pandemic. With that, I'm Adrian Seet. Thank you for tuning in and stay safe, Malaysia.